think what the president would have considered today, particularly from the net joints, which is the intelligence and defense and the police, would be actually what is the public sentiment out there, but also a report from the health minister. We've heard the health minister speaking a few days ago, saying when he was in the Northwest, that the reality is that we can't be under lockdown indefinitely, and in terms of the peak, we'll still peak, but that peak has now been pushed out. So I think now the initial panic that was there around lockdowns, where everyone was locking down, where we had to follow suit and to make sure that we minimize the spread of the virus, that has been done. I think now everyone understands, and South Africans are actually anxious now to saying, let's return to some form of normalcy. Let that return. So I think government will be sensitive to those things and to make sure that you actually do not lose the public confidence.
Public confidence is so important here. I mean, I would suggest that the worst possible outcome, or one of the worst outcomes, would be for government to lose legitimacy at a time as the number of infections and deaths start to rise. Now, government can lose legitimacy in all sorts of ways. You can have an incident involving soldiers. You can have an incident, I mean, as silly as it sounds, but you can have an incident involving the publication of what you can buy and what you can't buy at a clothing store. It feels that pressure's building.
Of course, Stephen, and I think, I mean, if you look at some of the things, I mean, if you're talking about clothing, some people are feeling that just open it up. Why do we have to itemize it of what you can and cannot buy? I think that is the way people are getting this sense of some kind of big brother of a government that is babysitting its citizens. So I think government has to be sensitive to that, and is being sensitive to that. And if it is to continue, because we remember when the lockdown started and the measures that were announced, everyone understood that it was for the greater good. But as time went on, people's frustrations started to grow, and people started to feel that the government is actually being autocratic in its approach. But I also think it didn't help in terms of the posture and the behavior and the body language of some of the ministers, where they're like wagging the finger, we are telling you. We're not educating you, we're not working with you, we are the government, we know best. So I think that kind of attitude hasn't worked in the government's favor. So I think probably President Cyril Ramaphosa will try and claw back some of that public confidence. Let's see if he can do it.
There's also a sense of direction. Now, COSATU seems to be permanent. COSATU's been quite interesting because it hasn't said, no, let's go to level 3 or level 2. They've sort of hedged their bets. I think over the last 48 hours, actually, COSATU's gone from sitting on the fence to kind of saying, let's go to level 3, but let's be safe while we're doing it. Their language has shifted, in my view.
Look, COSATU is, I mean, they have to look out for their interests, which is their members. I mean, COSATU's numbers have been severely depleted over the years with the growing unemployment. So the risk to them, and also their legitimacy and the power that they derive from the numbers. So for them, it is quite important that actually factories open. That's what they want. They want the workers back on the factory floors, so that they can make sure that the economy continues to grow, but also you have a president who is sitting there. There's growing frustration from ordinary South Africans. There's big business that has interest here. There are even some members of his cabinet rumblings within his own cabinet and even within his own party and alliance partners. So you can see that the odds are stacked against him.
How important is any sense of direction? And Sbu Ngalwa was making this point that what we want from the president, he said tonight on Newsfeed, was that we need direction. In other words, we kind of need to know where we're going. And I'm sort of reminded slightly of the DA's point. They say it's been a long time since the president addressed us. I mean, even a check-in sometimes, WhatsApp, how are you doing? That kind of thing can be important.
I mean, if you look at the American example, you've got a president, he might not be popular, but he's there every day. He's seen, he's leading from the front, because one of the problems with our case is that you have a president who says something and he speaks in a particular tone, which is where he's able to get the kind of emotions that he wants, and then he hands it over to ministers who actually take a totally different tangent. So I think it is important for the president to actually be leading from the front. Because I think the example of the cigarettes, that U10, that about 10 actually gave an impression of a president who doesn't have the authority or is not in charge. So I think it's quite important for him to chart that kind of direction, Stephen.
Okay, and then very quickly, you've also been working on the SANDF story today, and this involves the chair of Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Defence, Cyril Ramaphosa. We've seen various cases involving the SANDF. Ramaphosa seems to be saying people need to go back to the military to report them.
No, I think the point is driving there is that what we tend to do, which there's nothing wrong with, people see something and they post it on social media. But what he's actually saying is that when he looks at the complaints, that are sitting before the military ombuds, actually there are very few complaints. So he's actually encouraging members of the public to not only post stuff on social media platforms, but to actually go to the military ombuds so that those cases may be followed up, and then we can get to a logical conclusion. I mean, there are big cases that have ended up in court, like the Collins Khoza case.